The flickering light deep in the forest forebode nothing but ill fortune. Enrico knew to approach with caution. He turned to his team, speaking with a commanding tone. "Rebecca, you're with me. Spire, cover Dewey. Aiken, Sullivan, scout the perimeter." The pair split off wordlessly, disappearing into the inky blackness. Enrico and Rebecca traced a winding dirt road toward the source of the light. Rounding a bend, the beam from Enrico's flashlight glinted off chrome. An upturned Humvee lay crumpled before them. Dark stains pooled below the cracked windows. Enrico noted handcuffs dangling empty from the door handle. "Inspect the vehicle. There's been an accident." Enrico's voice was grim. Rebecca swept her light across the interior, glimpsing the violence that had unfolded. Tucked below the dash, a notebook. She thumbed through the pages before meeting Enrico's gaze. "I found something." Enrico crossed to read over her shoulder. The page detailed a prisoner transport order for a condemned man, Billy Cohen. Dishonorably discharged and sentenced to death by firing squad, a dangerous fugitive was now loose in their midst. Enrico lifted his radio. "Bravo team, we've got a wrecked vehicle and an escaped convict, likely injured. Ex-military, watch yourselves." Aiken's response crackled through. "What's this guy look like?" "White male, 6 feet. Tribal tattoo on his right arm. Report anything suspicious." Enrico clipped the radio onto his belt. "With me, Rebecca." They continued on, guided through the thick trees by the thin beams of their flashlights. Blood trailed like a gruesome breadcrumb trail. Back at the landing site, Dewey tinkered with the stalled helicopter engine while Spire leaned against the craft, taking a long drag on his cigarette. "Think this spooky old mansion has something to do with our haunted forest?" Spire exhaled, his breath mingling with the smoke. Dewey didn't look up from his work. "Can't complain too much about the guy bankrolling our operation. Even if he's into cannibalism and satanic rituals." Spire chuckled. "Hey, as long as he's paying for my sewers, the old nut can feast on babies for all I care." Their banter was cut short by a blood-curdling scream. Whipping around, Spire glimpsed a hulking wolf-like creature tearing into his friend. He emptied his clip into the thing to no effect. It extinguished Dewey's life with a sickening crunch between its jaws before turning its red eyes on Spire. Never had a chance to scream as monstrous fangs shredded his throat. More beasts closed in, ripping Dewey's lifeless body to chunks of gore. The last thing Spire glimpsed was the moon hanging low and yellow above the gnarled trees, his final breaths reduced to wet gurgles. Enrico and Rebecca silently walked through the dense forest, their boots crunching on the blanket of dried leaves and twigs scattered across the ground. The fading light of dusk filtered through the canopy above, casting long shadows across their path. Suddenly, the crack of gunfire in the distance shattered the stillness. They paused, exchanging an uneasy glance as they turned towards the source of the sound. Enrico swiftly grabbed the radio clipped to his belt. "Aiken, Spire, what's your status?" Enrico's gruff voice echoed through the trees. Static answered. "Dewey, Sullivan, do you copy?" His brow furrowed as he repeated the call, urgency creeping into his tone. Still no response. "Damn," he muttered. Turning to Rebecca, his expression was grave. "We better get back to the helicopter. Maybe that madman out there got to the others first." Rebecca nodded, her grip tightening on her machine gun. Before they could move, a thunderous roar reverberated through the forest. A massive bear burst through the underbrush, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its fur. Razor-sharp claws swiped at Enrico, slicing through his shirt and knocking him hard against the trunk of a nearby tree. He collapsed to the ground with a pained grunt, his weapon skidding away into the shadows. The bear loomed over Enrico, saliva dripping from its gaping jaws. Without hesitation, it began to rip into his abdomen, shredding flesh with each swipe of its claws. Blood-curdling screams escaped Enrico as the animal gutted him alive. Rebecca's blood ran cold at the nightmarish scene unfolding before her. Instinct kicked in. She rapidly fired rounds from her machine gun at the bear, the deafening barrage echoing through the woods. Yet the bullets barely slowed the beast as it continued its gruesome work. Enrico managed to draw his pistol with a trembling, blood-soaked hand. Point blank, he unloaded shot after shot into the bear's head. Still, it persisted in its attack, unfazed by the bullets burying into its skull. "Rebecca, run!" Enrico choked out, crimson frothing from his mouth. Rebecca's heart pounded wildly in her chest. The empty click of her machine gun told her she had exhausted her ammo. In a panic, she dropped the useless weapon and turned, sprinting blindly into the dark forest. The occasional burst of gunfire lit up her back as she weaved between the trees. She ran until her lungs burned, unsure of where she was headed. Suddenly, the hulking form of a stop train emerged from the gloom. Dim light glowed from within. Spying a half-open door, Rebecca rushed inside without hesitation, slamming it closed behind her. The door beeped and sealed with a mechanical whir, locking her safely inside. Chest heaving, Rebecca took in her surroundings. The interior was lavishly decorated: plush velvet seats, ornate wooden trim, glimmering chandeliers. Briefcases and purses lay strewn about, abandoned by their wealthy owners. She slowly made her way through the opulent train car, her boots sinking into the thin carpet. Rebecca grabbed her radio, desperation seeping into her voice. "Enrico has been wounded, requesting backup. Do you copy? The captain has been attacked. I'm on a train near Spencer Mansion. I'll stay here and await orders." Static answered her calls. "Forrest, Kenneth, guys." Letting out a dejected sigh, Rebecca continued on. The next car was shrouded in darkness. As she entered, the scent of decay assaulted her nostrils. With dawning horror, she took in the gruesome scene: the windows painted with blood, the seats filled with lifeless bodies. Expressions of terror were eternally etched onto their faces. Rebecca shivered, carefully stepping over the carnage. A garbled murmuring sound drew her attention. Gripping her gun, she cautiously followed the noise to a civilian radio lying on the floor, fuzzily broadcasting a news program. Suddenly, the lights flickered overhead. Rebecca quickly switched off the radio, plunging the car into silence. At that moment, the power cut out entirely, submerging her in pitch blackness. From behind her came anguished moans. Heart leaping into her throat, Rebecca whirled around, fumbling to switch on her flashlight. As the beam pierced through the dark, she gasped. One of the corpses was now slowly shambling towards her, milky eyes fixed hungrily upon her. Soon, more began to stir, until at least 5 undead surrounded her. "Officer Rebecca Chambers of Bravo Team, stay right where you are," Rebecca shouted, aiming her trembling pistol. The creatures paid no heed to her warning, continuing their relentless approach. "I said stay back or I'll shoot." Still they shambled closer, ragged arms outstretched. Rebecca took an unsteady step backward. "Last warning, stop or I'll open fire." The first zombie lunged with a guttural moan. Rebecca pulled the trigger, yet nothing happened. With mounting panic, she realized the safety was still on. Before she could react, the creature was upon her, fetid teeth snapping. Rebecca grappled with the undead, managing to fling it aside. She quickly flicked off the safety and unloaded 2 shots into its chest. To her dismay, it barely slowed the thing down. The other zombies closed in around her. Acting on pure survival instinct, Rebecca burst through the door into the next car, slamming it shut behind her. The undead pounded relentlessly against the barrier, their shadowy forms swaying behind the frosted glass. Turning, Rebecca realized she had entered a dining car, and more horrors awaited. 3 cadavers rose from the booths, flesh slouging from their bones. With shaking hands, Rebecca aimed and fired rapidly, again and again. The zombie staggered back with each shot, but remained standing, bullet holes oozing dark blood. Rebecca stammered in disbelief. Changing tactics, she shot out the knee of the first attacker. It crumpled to the floor, clawing its way towards her. Quickly, she repeated the action on the other two until all three crawled hungrily along the carpet. Shaken, Rebecca knew she had to keep moving. But when she turned to leave, several pallid arms smashed through the door's glass behind her. Jagged shards rained down as she leapt away from the clutching hands. Slamming in a fresh magazine, Rebecca took aim at the zombie trying to force its way inside. After hesitating a moment, she pushed forward to find safety, conserving her dwindling ammunition.